Yo, it's high five. So this is my first Patreon video, and firstly, I just want to say thank you to everyone that subscribed. It means a lot to me, and I thought for the first one, I should do a track breakdown just so I can give you guys a general overview on some of the stuff you can look forward to in the future. So the track we're gonna break down is "Long Way Home," and this one is forthcoming out on Cutcross soon from Sicaria Sound. So I kind of thought it'd be useful again, just to kind of look underneath the hood, look at some of the processing I've done, some of the techniques I've used, and the thought process. And yeah, hopefully this kind of stuff, you can pick up bits from what I've used, which you can use in your own productions. And then moving forward, I'm gonna kind of focus more on sound design and mixing and other creative tips and tricks to keep you guys, working and creating some amazing music. So let's have a quick little listen to this track and then we can start breaking it down. Cool. So when I made this track, Sicaria kind of asked me to kind of almost make something which leans towards maybe some of the previous tracks I've made. So any of you that's more familiar with my music, you might recognize some of these kind of sounds, especially if I highlight this, you might recognize this synth. And that's something I used on my J to Manhattan track. And this is something which I'm going to be stressing in future videos, just about making your own patches, making your own samples, so that when you are writing something, you don't have to create all your sounds from scratch every time. It's nice to just have like a folder of your own sounds, your own basses, your own pads, your own drums, which you can kind of just pick at and just use them in relevance to whatever track you're creating. So let's start with my drums. Pretty simple. I'm pretty old school. I came from Logic 9, and yeah, I do everything, well, majority of everything with audio. So a pretty simple drum pattern. Nothing that amazing, just a simple drum pattern with a bit of groove. I use my kicks in the sampler. This is something a friend kind of got me to do because they thought I was a bit crazy just doing everything through samples. And one kind of thing I do enjoy about using a kick in a sampler is that you can use this pitch envelope. So with some samples, with some kicks, I kind of find that it has the body that I want, but it doesn't have that kind of punch to kind of cut through in a mix. So I use this pitch envelope. I add 12 semitones here, so an octave, and I tweak the decay to taste, and it kind of gives me that little snap, that extra bite on the kick, which kind of changes the whole dynamics of the kick itself. And also when it comes down to the mixing stage, I have a kick that is more audible on smaller speakers and is not lost in the mix, and it's not like fighting my bass. Snares, claps, I just use like simple audios from sample packs I've accumulated over the years. And then same with my kick, I use my hi-hats in a sampler. So let's have a listen to my hi-hats here. And what you might have noticed, what I've done with my hi-hats here, I've just added a filter on it just so that my hi-hat ain't too bright. From this red dot we can see I've got a little bit of automation on it, and that's just for build-ups where my hi-hats will be just a little bit more in the background. And you can also tell that I'm playing my hi-hats at a lower key, just why it kind of like, yeah, it sounds more pitched down. And then I've also automated the delay with the build-up, just so it kind of just gets like, adds that kind of presence, you know, like with the build-up, just kind of almost letting the listener know that something's happening next, a little bit of ear candy. And I've also got a second hi-hat, which is just supporting the first one, which I've kind of muted. And just a simple TikTok kind of vibe. So let's have a quick look at some of these other sounds I have. I also have this drum glitch. So I solo my drums, and I also solo this as well. So that's a cool little, almost like a drum fill, and you can see that I have that going like every 16 bars, and so every 8 bars, 16, can't even count. So the way I've made that, pretty simple. So what I've done on my drum bus, I've got this plugin called Glitch 2, and if you don't have this plugin, you don't have to solely use Glitch 2. I'll show you how I did that, and I'll also show you how you can use Ableton's built-in plugins to do a similar effect. So with Glitch, I have it muted, but what I've done is that I've opened this up, and I kind of just been hitting the random just to see what I can get out of it. And I looped up like an 8 bar towards the end. So I set a little loop and then just hit play. And what I kind of done is just open up a new audio track, and then on my audio track, I set it to resampling, and then I activated it, and then I just hit record, and I just recorded the drum loop. And you know, like when you do that, you can just kind of like just sit there, hit record, just keep like hitting the random button, or just keep like, yeah, playing around with this, and you just record like a few different variations. As you can see that, like, I'm not just using the same glitch, I've got like 2 different variations which I alternate between, and you know, it adds another kind of nice texture. And rather than fully deleting everything that was playing, then I kind of left some of the elements. I took out some of the hi-hats and like the kicks at the end, just so that you can still have that dry signal, but you've got like this kind of glitch, which kind of, like, again, like I kind of said, just a bit ear candy. It's kind of letting the listener know that something's changing, that you were going into another section. So if you're not, or if you don't have a similar plugin to Glitch 2, you can also do the same effect with if I could find it. Grain looper. Not looper. Sorry. Beat repeat. So you can do a similar effect with beat repeat. Again, you know, let's just mute this because we don't need that. So what you may have to do, play around with some of the settings. So we'll just use a preset just for the sake of it. Deconstruct, see what that one's saying. Insert. See what it's saying. Cool. So that sounds pretty cool. So again, I would kind of resample that, but also I would maybe automate some of this as well. So we kind of want this, you want to change it to instrument, how it is, rather than mix. If you have it on mix, you will hear a blend of the two. So we'll have it as, I said instrument, I mean insert. So this is being treated as an insert, where all the signals going in, and then this is playing out everything after. You hear the difference? And then maybe if you wanted, like in the other glitch kind of loop I've had, you can hear some bit reduction. You can also hear it being reversed and stuff. Just add in some more plugins. So maybe add in the Redux, and then automating that as well. And you can kind of create just like, again, just some more kind of like drum loops, some weird like kind of drum fills, which you can kind of just layer up with your drums and create like these interesting, just like little ear candy moments. So also let's have a look at some of these basses I've made. If I open these up. So I was kind of saying before that I recycled one of my sounds. So this sound, this synth sound, I made this when I was creating Jada Manhattan, and the top part is just an analog. I used utility at the time to automate, just to automate the volume in the track. So throughout the arrangement, I would have it slightly louder, and then in like the B sections, I would have it slightly further back so that there was room for all other elements to go through. So rather than automating the track volume, I'd rather automate the gain on the utility so that when you set your volume, that's where it stays. So I'm not constantly playing around with this volume that's constantly moving. I can have my volume at a certain level, and then just have the gain be automated. And again, I had like reverb, put a bit of reverb on there, which I had that automated. And then I had EQ on it at the time, which I took off, and a bit of saturation at the end. So just so you can hear just the top bit by itself. And then I duplicated it, but rather than using analog, I used wavetables and created just a similar patch, just so that I could have more body into it. So it's the arpeggiator mainly was kind of keeping that same kind of melody, that same tone. And like, yeah, it's got similar processing. I kind of just wanted this one to be a little bit more dirty, so I added the sausage fattener on it. And I also got, this is like one of my favorite tools to use, the one knob pumper. And then this just kind of just gives it a little pulsing. And then both of them together, we get that sound. And also we can have a little look at my bass. So this bass that I made, I use wavetables, which is one of my favorite synths to use in Ableton. And I made a pretty simple 808 with it. We definitely be going into more depth on creating like basses and other stuff with wavetables. This is definitely my baby. So what I kind of did, I've got like a top and I've got a bottom, depending which way I did it, and solo this. Cool. So this is the main body of it, and it's just a simple processing: sine wave, saw wave. I shaped the ADSR just so that it's kind of tight. It's more kind of a kick. The main kind of bits is having like a bit of drive on my filter, and also having an envelope on my pitch, just so that you also kind of simulate that drum sound. So with a lot of 808s, to kind of get that whole kind of 808 kind of feel, is mainly having like your envelope set correctly and also having an envelope on your pitch, and you kind of just tweaking that just so that you get that kind of like initial high kind of tone on the impact, and then it kind of just tails off into the body. And then what I kind of did after that, just added a bit of saturation. So this is like the main body bit. And then for the kind of top end, or for the more kind of hollowy kind of sound, I just, again, pretty similar, just used 2 saw waves this time. I still kept the pitch envelope on both of the oscillators, and I just filtered out the EQ just so that we only had just a bit of the mid-range coming through, and then I added a chorus and some saturation onto it, and then both together we get that bass. And also I was kind of using this sample. So this is the kind of sample I got from a sample pack. And I chopped it up, and then I bounced it in place so that it kept that loop. And before I imported the sample into my Ableton project, I use Isotope's RX7 to kind of clean it up and get rid of as much background noise as possible. And then yeah, this is just kind of just rolling off in the background. And it just kind of adds like another kind of sense of rhythm. So if I have it muted, it's almost just like there's a lot of gap, there's a lot of space in between all the different sounds. And not that that space ain't nice and that it doesn't work without the sample, but with this sample there's just like an extra kind of groove within like all the different elements, without it being forced, without having to try and like write a new melody, without having to try and just like, yeah, create a new like percussion loop. I have like the use of the vocal and just like how it is just creates that extra kind of just like movement within the track. So again, even what I kind of look at some of these noises as well. So I like to create quite a lot of like weird noises with modular, and where is it? Here it is, my textures. And in some productions, I would either have like, yeah, all of these kind of like weird noises just rolling in the background, just looped up, or I would use found sounds. I would use like recordings of like me walking to work, or recordings of like my local park or in my area, or just me and the lads just chatting rubbish in the back of a car or whatever. And it kind of adds, again, like adding these kind of textures is weird because in your track you kind of have it at a level where it's just about audioable. However, when you mute it, you can notice that it's not there, but when it's there, it just adds that, again, extra kind of rhythm, this kind of weirdness which doesn't feel so like rigid and so quantized. Because again, one thing which like you guys will kind of start seeing in like future tutorials is trying to kind of break out of computer electronic music feeling like it's made by a computer. Want to try and add like these kind of like elements which ain't locked to a time signature or to a BPM. So like adding these kind of things, warping them, changing like the tempo, just changing the pitch of it, and just having it in the background just adds like these weird kind of textures. And the fact that it's looped, so the fact that I have it as a 16-bar loop, your brain kind of recognize it as a rhythm. So I could change it to just like an 8-bar loop and just have that looping along. The fact that it might not be any type of time signature or any type of rhythm, that 8-bar loop will become a rhythm of itself and then kind of create its own type of thing alongside the rest of your track, just like how the vocal sample has. And just having a quick look what else we got going on. So we got these builds. This is a build I made on Wavetable. Just a simple riser. But what you might notice as well is that what I've kind of done, I've laid it with a few other rises. And you, I'll get rid of you actually. So this another rise that I made. Just again, simple white noise. Then I just added just this little glitch I made with one of the builds. And then like all together, you kind of get like this kind of like this nice body with different layers and different kind of complexity. So moving on in the track, we'll move out of that first section. So this first 32 bars is section A, and then the next 32, you could say, is like section B. And what you might notice is that the up, whoops, loop that up. what you notice is that the ARP is playing like a slightly different melody. And what I also did as well is that I used another section of my vocal sample so that it's saying a different phrase. So all of these kind of stuff is just so that like the listener is not kind of getting bored of just like hearing the same repetitions. It not feeling so much as like it just being just loops and loops being moved into different parts. It just kind of having some sort of start, middle and end. So this up, I made this using Massive. Give that a close. Cool. And to create the up, we used the step sequencer. And what you can kind of do, this is something which I'll cover in more detail another time. But what you can do, you can kind of map this to your pitch envelopes. To your pitch on each oscillator, and you can have it so that each one of these steps turns into it tells your oscillator to go to a different semitone. So in the first part of the track, I had it starting from 1, so it's, but I had it only looping just like that first 8 bar. And then in section B, I had it only looping the second 8 bar. So from here. Whoops. So all I did was just open it up and just change the start position, and then you kind of just get like slightly, it's starting off in a different key, and it's just like changing the mode of the tune. And then on top of that, I used Reverb's ROM reverb. Amazing reverb if you haven't got it already. It was a free download Christmas last year. Hopefully it's still free if you guys get your hands on it. I've been using it on almost everything. And I also use I thought I was using my one time, my half time. Guess I was using that in different sections. And again, I use this a lot on everything. One knob to create a pumping, and you can use Ableton's auto pan to create a similar effect. Used a bit of compression to control the ARP. Used, in fact, forget what I just said. I used these two compressors, sidechained. One sidechained to the bass, and one is sidechained to my synth, just from a mixing perspective, to just give room for those two sounds. And then I have my auto filter as well, which has an automated filter cutoff. So in fact, what we'll do, we'll have a look at some of these automations I've got going on. So we can see with my other ARP section, so if I solo this, and I'll just, to kind of stop this patch and this sound, because it's a very repetitious ARP. So to kind of stop it from feeling too repetitious, I've used automation just to kind of just give it a little bit more movement, and again just to kind of just either identify that a section of the song is changing, or that like there is some kind of like this is happening next, or we're moving into this section. So we can kind of see that I've automated the mix of my reverb, also automated the frequency cutoff on my auto filter. I've got my one pump automating as well, so the depth of it, like how deep this ARP is pumping. And I've also automated the mix of my halftime. So you'll notice it more once we get to that second section. So now we can hear the higher frequencies come in. You can hear the pump coming up some more. Now you can hear all this reverb. And you can hear like the lower tones from the halftime. And you can still hear that pumping kind of sound coming from the one pump. And then it all just kind of like, filters down to leave room so that it can loop back up again. And stuff like this, it's just like within the track, it just creates that more kind of character to one sound. So I've got all of this like building up during the breakdown. So while the track is still playing, it's a bit more subtle effects. Giving room for all the other elements within the track. And then, that breakdown is just like loads of space, loads of reverb, loads of pumping, just so that it's kind of just like creating this kind of, I don't know, really atmospheric experience. And then it kind of like slowly filters down, slowly peters down, just to leave room for the second drop. And then even on the second drop, I just kind of made sure that like it doesn't just go straight into the other track. It doesn't go straight into just like all elements playing all over again. Just adding a bit of space, just kind of breaking some things down, taking some elements out before you bring it back in, almost kind of insinuates that like the section is slightly different. And then what I did with this one, I switched up the snares. So it's a slightly different snare drum pattern for the first 16 bars, just to again kind of just switch up the second drop and kind of just try and keep it interesting for the listeners. So I hope that you guys can kind of just get a rough idea on my production process with some of these elements. Usually when I'm writing a track in Ableton, I don't normally mix down straight after I finish a track. So even though I kind of mentioned some of these thought processes I've done is to kind of help the mix, what I try to do is that when I'm creating, I'm spending most of my brain power creating. So I get all my ideas down, I do all my sound design, I get all my arrangement, and I focus fully on just enjoying the creating process and just having fun making a song. And I try not to worry about how the mix sounds too much. I still consider how some sounds will play within my mix, but the main purpose is just to create something and just to try and get to the finish line. Once I finish my arrangement, what I would normally do, or what I always do, I always bounce out everything into stems, and then I either take the stems into Logic and mix from there, or back into a new Ableton project using the stems. I will mix down, and by doing this, you kind of commit to everything you've done, and you're not going to be tweaking melodies, you're not tweaking plugins, you're not tweaking certain settings. It's a lot easier for your CPU as well, and you can just fully focus on trying to make your sound as clear and as dynamic as possible, rather than kind of going back and forth on your creative ideas and only focus on your mixing ideas. So to wrap it up, this is Long Way Home. Go check it out on Cutcross, and here's just some of like my processing and my thought patterns to creating a track. I hope you all enjoy, and next month we'll look at some more creative techniques.